So hello and welcome back. Another episode 3 of Living the Small Business Life. And I think, a bit of small business reality. This is the third one that we've actually recorded back to back this time. So I think
block out a diary, quick afternoon,
absolutely.
That's it.
But no, it's all going really well. So this time round we were going to have a chat about recruitment and outsourcing. So everything to do with kind of building a team, growing a team, what that team looks like in terms of employed / freelancing / outsourcing. So yeah, I guess if we kind of go back to the beginning of our businesses, how did that look for you guys and how's that changed?
So we started with 4 or 5 people, I can't remember now, it's such a long time ago, 4 or 5 members of staff, myself and my business partner, and we had to bring in certain individuals that we knew were going to be able to perform, because part of the plan is that you're going to hit some certain metrics within a very short space of time. We knew we had to sell because selling's key to that plan. End of story. So we took on a proven telemarketer because we knew they could book appointments. So that was our first member of staff. Our second member of staff was somebody who operationally could facilitate what we were selling, because obviously that was quite key, because we were selling products and actually couldn't implement any of what we'd sold. And then we had a sales guy that we took on, that again we'd worked with previously, had experience of. So the initial stages of recruitment are quite simple really, because you pretty much know the people that you're going to be working with. Thereafterwards though is when I think the challenges become, because I think now if you look at most CVs that you get coming through, mostly are now written by artificial intelligence. They're not actually written by the individuals themselves. And also, I don't think in all the years I've recruited hundreds and hundreds of people, I don't think I've ever had a CV where someone says, I'm not actually very good at what I do, or I'm average. I will just come in and do a job and go home to the best of my ability. It's always, I'm the best. I've done this. I was the number one at that. I was the number one at this.
It's a bit samey, isn't it?
Yeah, it's never. You never get a true CV, and I think from a small business owner, I would actually rather someone be brutally honest on a CV, because then you actually get to know and understand that character. If that makes sense.
I think it does, and I think when it is the different. I know we've talked about this in different contexts between the three of us, because I think it is that difference between we're talking about ourselves as small business owners and the challenges that come with that.
Yeah.
But then, it's a very different working with people who you're employing. That's a completely different relationship. And they're obviously coming to work or approaching working for you in a different way. In the intro episode, all three of us were like, I don't ever want to be employed again. But obviously we want to employ people as small businesses. So I think that is something, like you say, that you kind of need to navigate in terms of, it's not just skills based. It's also, what do you want people through the door to do? What are they bringing to your business? When we were talking about strategy and planning, we were talking about bringing the team together around your plan. Like, are they the person, like you say, maybe they are super average at what they do, but actually they're totally on board with your, I was going to say, they're on board with your goal. They're there every day. They do exactly what, does what it says on the tin. They're doing exactly what you ask them to do. Yeah. And actually that could massively benefit your business.
Yeah, 100%. I think that one of the things, looking back at the strategy piece and planning, to recruit people now seems to be, and has been throughout our small business life journey, has been very difficult to do, to get good people. And the other element to that is the cost element. If you start using recruitment agents, and I have nothing against recruitment agents, there's some absolute class recruitment agents we've worked with in the past, brought us some brilliant staff, but there is a huge cost to that. A huge cost element. And to keep the cost down initially, we were very focused on referral, word of mouth, posting out on social media, because obviously go back 15 years or so, there wasn't a huge social media presence, or it was there, but not everybody was on it. Well, you'll come across very few people today who are not on one platform of social media. So, you know, we started to use that quite heavily in the beginning to attract members of staff, people posting it on their own Facebook pages, you know, Twitter pages, any form that we could get it out where we were trying to reduce the cost. The problem with that is that sometimes you don't necessarily attract the right caliber of people because they might not be experienced in that role. Whereas if you're using a recruitment agent, they will specifically target an individual that's in that area, in that role, doing a similar job that they can attract over to your business. So, you know, recruitment is a gamble, I think, all the time.
How have you found it, Ben?
Well, our first employee, actually, so there was two of us when we started out, two business partners. We knew that we needed to bring someone in, like an extra pair of hands initially. So we decided to go for an apprentice.
Oh, cool.
I was an apprentice originally, so, you know, obviously had a great experience doing my apprenticeship, working in a real life environment for, you know, the local council, getting that experience as well as working on MVQs, I think it was back then. I don't know if they're still a thing or not. But so I think we wanted to keep costs low. We knew we needed an extra pair of hands. So we went out to a local sort of training company that provided IT specific apprentices. So they would provide all the training. We, you know, didn't have to pay over the odds, obviously, for an apprentice. But generally, we got someone that had done a couple of years computing course at college. So they had a little bit about them, but they were just keen to get into the workplace. So that was how we got employee number one. Funnily enough, that employee now is my business partner and the operations director within Bluebell IT. So, you know, it's been great to see his evolution, and just to watch his journey has just been great to see, and really rewarding, you know.
Great fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just nice to have that kind of like reminder every day of like a really successful recruitment.
Yeah. I mean, it's an absolute success story, and you know, he passed all of his, I think it was like BTECs and things like that with flying colours. And you know, the good thing about bringing apprentices in as well is you're not bringing in someone that's maybe worked somewhere for 20 years. They're a bit set in their ways. They maybe think they know better. They've always done it this way. You're able to shape and mould them the way you want to. So when we brought Waj in, he moulded very quickly to how we wanted to work. And, you know, he was very quick to pick up on our values and how we speak to clients, how we want to do business, the systems we use, all that sort of stuff. So, you know, it was really great to bring on that first apprentice. With employee number two, we thought that would work again, and it didn't. The reason for that is by then we were actually starting to fire on a few cylinders, and we didn't really have the time to invest in that apprentice. So when we brought Waj in on you know, as the first employee apprentice, you know, we were able to offer a lot of time. He had access to both me and my first business partner. But yeah, come the second apprentice, you know, another 6-12 months later, it was almost like the apprentice teaching the apprentice, which probably wasn't the right way to go about it. And we were out a lot more doing projects for customers and things like that. So we then needed to actually bring in what I'd call a skilled employee, somebody with experience, you know, maybe got some technical qualifications. So it's changed as it's gone on. And, you know, we've used a mixture of recruitment agencies. We've had, you know, word of mouth referrals as well, which is always great. But yeah, I think we've also tried things like using like Indeed and online services, which hasn't really worked for us. You know, you get bombarded with a million CVs. They don't read the job descriptions.
Too time consuming. That,
yeah, very time consuming. So
it's a time market.
Yeah, so we found actually using a recruitment guy has been really good for us. So he's not charging the same as full-blown agency fees, but he really understands our business and our values and the type of people we're looking to bring in. And I think, you know, we're looking for skills, you know, people with technical skills, but also in IT, you can find that you've got somebody that's very, very technical, but then they can't really interface with customers in the right way, or, you know, maybe manage a team and things like that. So we sort of see team fit as probably one of the most important things. And, you know, I've heard us saying a million times, you know, if you've got the will, you can teach the skill and all that sort of stuff. And I think to a degree that's right. But we're also looking to build the business now, and the people that are coming in and the team that we've built, I see as, you know, the future senior leadership team within the business.
Yeah.
Because everyone, you know, has bought the ticket on what we're trying to do, understand what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve, and our values, and that's really, really important.
Yeah.
And you know, we've brought in someone before that, you know, looked good on paper, had the skills, but was a little bit of a bad egg, and, you know, caused more problems, and was a bit lazy, and, you know, didn't get back to some of our clients, and that then caused some other issues and things like that. So I think just having a person with the right work ethic, understanding your values, and also having the skills is a really important team fit.
And in a nice environment as well.
Yeah. I was going to say, Ben, you've got like a couple of employees who started off and are still with you.
I think that's because of the for us, it was a little bit different because of the speed at which we grew. It's probably the wrong phrase, but better the devil you know. And I don't mean that in a detrimental way to the staff that we have got in the positions they are at now, or the positions they were in at the time. What I mean by that is that we had opportunities being created, you know, on a monthly basis, weekly basis. It was literally growing so fast, and we had staff that were in different departments doing different jobs, and looking at those individuals, understanding how they worked and their skill set. It was like, hang on a second, have you ever thought about doing this particular role?
Yeah.
No. Well, do you want to have a go at it? Because I think you fit it really well. And, you know, our operations, very similar to Ben, our operations director now, Nina, and shareholder of the business, actually started doing telesales. Finished university, come out of university, needed to earn some money, was a graduate, got the degree, couldn't find a job, took a job, you know, bashing the phones trying to book appointments for us to go out and sell to. And straight away, when she come in, I'll be honest with you, she was absolutely horrendous at booking appointments. She could not book an appointment to save her life. However, her work ethic, the way she ran herself, you know, it was like, hang on a second, she's really good. She's really good. She's really methodical. Even the calls she was making, great telephone manner, got on well with people, just couldn't nail down that appointment. And now she runs our care team, head of operations, you know, she does everything. And, you know, Ben was talking about feedback. Our customers absolutely love interacting with her as an individual. She's absolutely brilliant. You know, our engineer was, again, telemarketing. Very good with his hands after numerous conversations. You know, what are you doing this weekend? Oh, I'm out building this, I'm out doing that. So, what? I didn't know you could do that. And in the end, we said, do you want to learn how to become an engineer and install telephone systems, switches? And he's still learning now today. But he does a very good job of what he goes out and does, provides a good service. Customers, again, love him. Absolutely love him. So yeah,
bit of chat the lad about him, hasn't he?
Yes, yeah, he is a little bit. Yeah, he is a little bit. But he's a great individual, and we've had, you know, other employees that have come through and fulfilled those positions and moved on to pastures new and stuff. But yeah, I recruitment's a real difficult one. It is. Sometimes it is a suck it and see, because you just don't know whether someone because the recruitment process is not just about you looking for a member of staff. The job has got to be right for that individual as well. It's a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. You know, the environment has to be right for those individuals. You know, the culture has to be right for those individuals. It's not just you could take the best person, best third-line engineer on the planet, Ben. He might come in here, does not like the environment, does not like the way you interact with staff. You know, it doesn't make them a right fit for your business. So not necessarily the best person and the most skilled person at that level is the right fit for your business, and quite the other way as well. That individual has to want to work in that environment. And, you know, I think both businesses have got quite a flexible environment. It's quite a family orientated environment. You know, there's no glass bowls. You know, we're doing a podcast in your office today.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, to try and be as real as we possibly can. You know, we don't sit in goldfish bowls and bark orders from a telephone. We're in amongst the staff, working, myself included. And even when we were at, 27, 28 staff, we were in the middle of them. We were working with those individuals. And I think that's the key for me. The recruitment is a suck it and see. And if you do come across a great recruitment guy, which to be fair, we've come across one who's an absolute star, doesn't charge the earth, isn't looking to make, you know, thousands and thousands of pounds on a recruit. It's a fixed fee. It's reasonable for the work that he puts in. And he does a good job, and that's a route. You know, I've just found the online stuff is just dead. You just end up spending so much time sifting through CV after CV after CV. But routes to market have been social media from existing staff. We've done very well with that recently. And also a recruitment guy who's a reasonably priced recruitment guy.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think for Move it is slightly different. So we tend to work predominantly with freelancers, but within that, I would say we work regularly with the same freelancers. Yeah. So, and I think that's, you know, things like the podcast projects. We need people who can work on that project, but we might not necessarily have another project coming up for a few months after that. So it's helpful for us to have basically people when we need them, and then between
you pay
projects.
as you go.
Absolutely. But I think there's lots of challenges in that as well. And I think a lot of them are ones that you've sort of detailed like here as well. I think sort of, you know, fit, and having somebody with freelancing, you've got somebody who doesn't have a permanent attachment to your business, but they're going to be interacting with clients. They're going to be talking to people. And I think, you know, certainly for me, I tend to work with the same freelancers, and I'm often checking in with them saying, excellent, I know we're working on this project. Oh, tell me what you've got coming up. And like, I've always got my eye on, you know, if this client's going to go again, I'd really like to have the same person on it. And actually I work really well with this person. So, you know, tell me about your other work. What have you got? So that I can almost like climb the ladder with them to be like at the top of their list. Like, would they almost, in that thing about you saying with recruitment, it's not just you looking for someone, what's someone looking for with you. Like, I'm always aware that I want to be like, hey, you know, if I've got a good project, I want to be at the top of your list as well. And I think, you know, that's something that you really sort of have to bear in mind.
I suppose with your industry as well, it's a little bit different because the type of freelancers that you're looking for to do the work you're looking for them to do, they'll have a portfolio of work you can review before you say you are the one. Whereas if you're recruiting an individual to complete a job, you've got you can contact their existing or previous employer, which, you know, you send a letter and it will go through to a HR department or a manager of that department, and they'll say, did they turn up on time? Yes. Couple of tick boxes. That's the best you're going to get. Unless you know the person that's previously employed them, and you can have a you know, an off the cuff phone call with them. But it's a gamble. Whereas in your industry, it's a little bit different. You do get to see what that person's producing. Yeah,
definitely. And I think there's other similarities, like, you know, like you said, there's sort of, you know, that word of mouth. Like, you know, if I'm working on a certain project and I know that we're going to need some, you know, we've got a producer, but we're going to need an extra one, or we're going to need somebody else to do sound or whatever it is. I often ask existing freelancers, right, I know you work on projects like this. Can you recommend someone that, you know, can do sound for us or whatever it is? Because that is also exactly like you say, can be really helpful. It's almost like a little bit pre-approved. Which I think is helpful.
I was going to say, do you find that difficult in terms of planning for projects though, relying on freelancers? So, you know, when you've got a team of people that are employed, you know, and you've got a project that you've got to deliver, you can throw people at it or, you know, jig things around. But if you've got a project that you've got to deliver for client X and it needs to be done, and then that person's not available that you've always relied on because they've probably got 3 or 4 other projects going on, you know, have you come up against those sorts of challenges?
So last year we had a project which the client wanted to start work on in the middle of September, but the freelancer that I wanted for the project was saying I could only do it from the beginning of October. And so I sort of had a kind of 2-week period where I was having meetings with the client sort of saying, oh yeah, absolutely, everything's in place, we're all good to go, like we're ready, don't worry about it.
I've got it covered.
Yeah, honestly, we're totally on it. So sorry that the producer couldn't make this meeting, but we're absolutely going to be ready to record. And so there can be like points like that where it gets a little bit, and I think I've always got my eye on balancing talking to new people so that I know more freelancers, so that I've got more people that I could speak to, but at the same time you don't want to be promising something when you're sort of looking for a backup, or vice versa. So it's a difficult balance sometimes.
But then looking for a backup that might not be as good as the original person you'd use, and the integrity piece there, I suppose, as well.
But I think there's also, like you were saying about sort of like skills and so kind of, and you were saying about values actually. So in the middle of last year, we had a podcast producer who was pretty much working on all of our projects, and they decided that they were going to go and get an employed role. So it wasn't like there was anything I could offer them. They wanted a completely different form of employment. They were gone. And at the time I was thinking, oh my God, like all the clients like them. They're working on all our projects. What on earth am I going to do? But actually, I think there's sort of I think you also have to have some kind of trust around the people that you've spoken to and your values and the environment that you've built. Because actually, once I started talking to a few people and they were like, oh, that project sounds great. And yeah, I could do that. And I'm available. And I was like, okay, right, relax, breathe. This isn't. And now we work with a couple of different producers and it's worked out really well. So I think there's also, like you say, that at the moment where you need someone and you're thinking, my God, what are we going to do about this?
Do you think that Move Digital will get to a point with your plans for growth over the next sort of year? Do you actually need to recruit for full-time employees or part-time employees rather than using freelancers?
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening, because I think there are, if you look across the industry as well, I think, there are employed roles in terms of podcast production or account management within podcasting and that kind of thing. So there's definitely that kind of bank of talent of people out there who are looking for employed roles like that as well. And it would be lovely to have, to have that kind of sorted as well. But then, as both of you have just mentioned, we'd be kind of swapping. It's a different set of considerations. But yeah, absolutely. I think as the business develops, I think the way that we work with people and recruitment will develop for us as well.
Need that sort of steadier stream of work, guaranteed work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So one thing we're not touched on, which I think we brought up in one of our get-togethers on a Friday, is when you need to recruit, which is also quite key. And myself, Ben and Wadge had a very lengthy discussion last Friday about when you should recruit an individual. For me, that's quite a difficult one, because you can look at KPIs until you're blue in the face to tell you, Ben come up with some stats within the IT industry that said, X amount of revenue should equate to a, support desk engineer. Whereas I disagreed with him on some of those facts. And the reason is that sometimes especially in a small business, you've got to have a gut feel around something. And, we were talking about when do we introduce the next, support agent into that desk. And it's like, well, when you walk into that office, for let's say a 5-day period, and every single one of your agents is glued to a phone and has not come off the phone, and you start to see your support tickets going up and up and up and they're not being closed, yes, you may say, well, that's too late. But if you can start to read that just before that trigger point, that for me is the point that you then say, we need another support agent, because I can feel it in my bones. I've brought on X amount of customers. We've got X amount of projects building up. We've got X amount of calls coming in. Everybody's flat out. There isn't a day that goes by where I don't see someone on the phone. Whereas if you see someone sort of in the background tapping on their phone, on social medias quickly, that, not necessarily will the plan be at the right point where you say, I need to introduce that member of staff, which I think leads on to outsourcing, where, both businesses have done that. I won't mention the company in today's episode, because hopefully we'll get them on a podcast. But we probably just after COVID were trying to recruit staff again, from an operational point of view. Put tons of adverts out there. The whole home working questions started coming in, which obviously we'll discuss at another episode, which we all have our own opinions on. Those sort of questions started being flinging out, and it didn't matter what adverts we put out there, or even recruitment agents, we just could not fill some of these roles. It was like nigh on impossible, and some of the candidates that were coming through the door were just not the right fit for the business, or the business wasn't the right fit for them.
Was it for a particular type of role, or was it just across the board?
It was operational. It was all operational stuff, and it just, it didn't even matter if we put flexible working in there in terms of hours.
Yeah.
You know, opening it up to potential mums or dads who had to do the school runs and had to leave at 3 or whatever it may be. We just couldn't recruit, and then we were getting really stretched. You know, it was every time I looked at the phones, there was red lights everywhere. Everybody was on the phone. I thought, this is not good. And then I got a phone call out of the blue from a young lady who called me and said, "Oh, have you ever thought about outsourcing?" And I was like, well, not really, but, you know, we'll have a look. Look, we've got some candidates. We've seen you've been advertising. Would you mind if we sent them through? Okay, send them through. They're not based in this country, which was another fear of mine.
Yeah.
They're actually based in Lahore, in Pakistan. And I thought, you know, okay, let's give it a go. Anyway, we got some videos sort of sent through of the individuals that we wanted to take on, and it's just a pre-recorded script of them introducing themselves and saying what they do, etc., etc. And I thought, wow, these people seem really like, I was blown away with them. I was like, these are good. Anyway, then we had virtual meetings with them, sort of interviews on Teams, which obviously Teams went boom just after COVID and during COVID. And what fabulous individuals. They literally were great finds, and we've had 4 of them now, and they're absolutely brilliant. They're literally absolutely brilliant, and they work. The company that we use is really adaptive. We've taken a few that didn't quite work out, but the way they work is that you basically trial them for 2 weeks. So you literally can try before you buy, and literally they come in, they'll do the job. You know, you can have a frank meeting with them at the end of the trial period, and then you decide on whether or not you take that individual on. It's literally brilliant. It's worked out really well for us, and especially now with the way technology has moved forward. You know, the phone system works out there. They've got our phone system. They provide all of their IT infrastructure out there. They have flexible working. They can actually work from home whilst working for us. They work UK hours, and they're absolutely brilliant. And the feedback we've had from our customers on them is just brilliant. Nothing short of brilliant. But it's a crying shame that we tried to advertise in this country and couldn't, because a lot of people will shun it. Well, why are you allowing people, you're taking the money out of the UK? Well, no, not really. We tried. Like, we used recruitment agents. We used Indeed. We used... Reed, we used everybody.
It's like a last resort almost.
Yeah, it was. It was a last resort.
Do you use outsourcing in your company?
Yeah, so we've used the same company.
Okay.
So we've got one individual. We brought him on initially to do some outbound sales calls for us.
Yeah.
And very quickly we could see how switched on he was, and he had a bit of a creative mindset as well. So he's actually moved on to doing all of our social media marketing, blogging for the website, does email marketing for us. And he's fantastic, and the work ethic that he brings, and he just ticks all those boxes. Like I say, when you're recruiting a permanent employee, he fits in with the values, he integrates with the team really well. He gets what we're trying to do. He's, even though he's not employed by us, it's like he is employed by us. The model that company uses.
Just going to say, they are these, even though they are employed by another company, they solely work for both the Bluebell companies. And they are part of the team. They're involved in the meetings.
I was going to say, like, do they, so you were saying that they work UK hours. So, like, how often do you speak? Is it like having another team member? Do you speak to them
it's
as
like
much
they're
as
working
you
remotely. They're literally, they literally are involved in all of the team meetings. They have, regular dialogue with staff throughout the day. They're in regular contact. They take all the inbound calls, unless, we pick it up here. But they take, majority of the inbound calls. They speak to customers on a regular basis. They've been fully trained in the industry. They know it inside and out now. They're involved in everything. It's just like having a remote worker that's based at home, sat in their living room. They're not. They're just based in Lahore in an office, working for us. And they're classed as, not at any point do they class themselves as working for the company they actually work for, they actually class themselves as working for Bluebell.
Yeah.
And they are Bluebell through and through. You know, they can't work hard enough for you. They're just literally brilliant. They're just absolutely brilliant. In actual fact, one of them, who we did take on originally for telemarketing purposes, didn't do a particularly good job, but it wasn't because he was bad at the job he was doing. That particular role takes a certain type of individual, and there's a certain element of coaching that needs to be done and development with that individual. That's where we struggled a little bit in that role. So we sort of stepped away from that telemarketing piece. Now, funny enough, that individual is coming back to the UK.
Yeah.
And we're in dialogue with him to actually take him on as a potential employee for Bluebell Cloud Solutions.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so, you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know, isn't it? But yeah, he you know, some of the roles work out really well, and I think Ben, you hit the nail on the head there with, you know, he started with the telemarketing, he's moved on to the social media side. This company provides a lot of services. It's not just operational, it could be anything.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've utilised them and they've been brilliant. But outsourcing as well, we also outsource a bookkeeper as well for both businesses. And that in itself has been brilliant. You know, our bookkeeper's been with us for 7 years. They've introduced us to new accountants. They've introduced us to new customers.
Yeah.
Because obviously they've got, you know, they don't just do bookkeeping for us, but they're involved in the business. And I've found that anyone or any individual we've outsourced is part of Bluebell.
Yeah.
They don't walk into the office as though they're coming from their business or, you know, communicate with us as though they're from another business. Everybody is part of the team. It's not, you know, they're invited to the Christmas do's, you know, stuff like that. They're all the quizzes we did at Christmas, all the guys from Lahore are involved.
Yeah.
You know, they know everybody that works in the business.
Yeah.
They get virtual tours of the offices as well.
But it sounds like, I think, you know, and in terms of what, obviously we're doing this podcast to talk about like the realities of small business, but it sounds like, you know, one of the things that you could take away from that is that actually both of you have approached it as, you know, you understand the benefit of outsourcing, but actually you've also approached it as you want this to be extra team members that you've actually
100%.
you know, whatever somebody's employment looks like on paper, in reality you want them to be part of the team. And I think that's probably quite a key learning, because if you're offering that to somebody no matter where they are,
100%.
and however they're working, that has, you know, that has power for bringing somebody into the team.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you've also got to be with recruitment. I think you've got to be diverse as well. You know, you've got to look around and and think to yourself, you know, I know for a fact, I think it was a common thing, you know, when BT first introduced their call centres in India, there was outcry across all media platforms. Can't understand the individuals behind, you know, on the telephone. It's very difficult. Their customer service ratings went down.
Reading a script.
Yeah, and it was reading a script, and you know they've been sort of chicken farmed in terms of spoon-fed news that they would chat to you about. You know, we've moved on massively from there. The individuals that we work with now, you know, you wouldn't tell they're from Lahore. You know, if you spoke to them now, you'd think they're from Canada. You know, they're not spoon-fed every day. Their access to information now is so easy. You know, they know more about the UK news than we do. You know, in the mornings I get a debrief. It's like, oh, how you doing? Oh, I see there's something today. Like, when did you see that? Well, not realising they've been up for 4 hours before we've been to work. But yeah, I think you have to be diverse now, and there is, you know, we'll probably do an episode on this, but you know, there is still a lot of old blood out there that doesn't like certain things happening within the UK. You know, if you've got, even we've taken on individuals in the UK with an accent, for argument's sake, and you get some backlash from that, even from a telemarketing point of view.
So I mean, I suppose in a different version of the question that you were asking me when we were talking about like freelancing, like how do I see like employment going forward? Like both of you have mentioned like a range of different employment arrangements. Like how do you see that in the future? Do you think you'd continue to explore all of those avenues, or?
Yeah, I mean for me, as Bluebell, we've actually got a couple of our clients are recruitment agencies.
Yeah.
And, I'm in dialogue with the business owners there, and, they are struggling at the moment in terms of, filling places. I think with all the uncertainty going on in the world right now, I think that people are tending to stay where they are and just see, let's give it another 6 months and see what happens. And I've known from some other business owners that have used agencies, they've offered a role, they've offered a good salary, but then that individual that's been offered the job has then gone back to their current employer and got more money. So they end up going, well, actually, I can get the same money if I stay where I am now. No change, all of this sort of stuff. So I think there's a bit of that going on. And that's just from what I know from speaking to a couple of owners of recruitment businesses. In terms of outsourcing, actually, another client of ours has just outsourced their entire sort of operations team to India.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they've done that off the back of the success that both Bluebell businesses have had with our individuals.
Okay.
So they were really struggling to recruit,
finding
the right individual, with the right skill set for the type of work that they're doing.
But they've gone completely the other way.
Yeah,
Just gone all of it.
Well, what they've done is they've kept sort of account managers UK based,
Yeah.
but the back end operational staff are based in India. So, but they're not using an agency for that. They've actually employed those individuals directly as working for them. So they've required an office over there, an office space for those individuals to work in. And having a conversation with the owner of that business, they were just saying, we were really struggling to recruit, and finding the right skills. And I think, looking at India and other places over there, like Pakistan as well, there are billions of individuals, that are highly skilled, highly trained, highly motivated, and there's a market to tap into there. I think for us, it's about having a blend, and again, it's looking at salaries, but also looking at the individual, and again, as long as they fit in with the values, again, what we're trying to achieve, they've got the skills, then we'll continue to explore all of those avenues. But like Ben said, we've got a really good recruitment guy, so he's always our first port of call, but we know that we've got this agency over in Pakistan now that will find us individuals if we need to. And like Ben said, we've got this almost like try before we buy type arrangement, which is great because you're not sort of going through all the recruitment, the HR, they deal with all of that for you. They even supply the laptop, all of that sort of stuff we don't have to worry about. So it takes a lot of the pain away. You've got HMRC, tax, all PAYE, all of that sort of stuff. So I think it has its use cases. I don't think I'd build a whole business based on outsourcing, particularly overseas.
And they're highly educated.
But and I think the individuals that we've got, I think one's done a degree in to be a doctor, another one's done a degree in law, and they've studied at American based or UK based universities or online American sort of
Speak
English.
4 different languages.
So these are highly skilled people,
which in actual fact helped us out the other day, just to put in there. So we had a particular customer that we were just concluding business with back end of last week, and I was actually engaged with the customer, and there was a certain element of the deal that was getting a little bit complicated to overcome, and there was a bit of a communications barrier there, and I was aware that one of the guys that we've got in Lahore spoke an array of languages, and got them to jump on the call. The response we got from the customer was unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
Unbelievable. It was like, oh my God, I can actually understand what's going on. I'm only an accountant. I don't really understand this technical stuff. It's so good to speak in a language I completely understand. I've not had any dialogue with that customer since Friday. They've literally been speaking to the guys. So
this is the ultimate test.
Exactly.
How Bluebell are they? They could be no.
So they've done the deal. They've completed the deal. I have had zero communication with that individual or that customer since last Thursday, Friday last week.
Yeah.
So it does have its massive benefits. Massive.
Excellent. So I guess to finish up, what sort of, I suppose, in a nutshell, what kind of advice do you think you would give overall for
I think
recruitment?
I think for me, I mean, you've got to explore the avenues and find out what works best for your business, and it could be multiple things as we've discussed. But I know for the IT side of Bluebell, team fit is the most important thing.
Yeah.
You know, we've recruited people before that have got really great skills, but they've not really been able to mould with the team or integrate with the team, and then that sort of has an effect onwards in dealing with customers and you know, not having the right work ethic. So I think, you know, if you can find an individual that you know is going to integrate well in the team, and you can sort of coach them and guide them as well, because that's really important as well. When you bring on somebody, you know, you want their skills, but they need training. You know, they particularly in IT, you know, there's courses and accreditations and certifications that you need to get to maintain their skill sets, and there's new technologies coming out all the time. So it's definitely a two-way thing. But yeah, I think also, just team fit and you know, bringing on what I would class as an A player. You know, we want a load of A players in our business, and I think we're luckier that we've got that now. So yeah, that's the most important thing that I would say.
Ben?
Advice: eyes wide open. Just be open to suggestions from anyone, especially if you're struggling for recruitment. Explore as much as you can from a social media element from your existing staff around people they may or may not know, because you just don't know. The outreaches now on social media are just far more than you would ever get if you posted a job on Indeed, because the thing is, with someone on Indeed, if you're posting a job, the likelihood is there's a candidate looking that might not fit but might go, oh, that might be right for me. Whereas social media, you're getting out to so many people that might go, oh, that job perfectly fits me. That's exactly what I want to do. So yeah, I would just say don't shun anything, you know, whether it's outsourcing, whether it's using, you know, referrals from your own businesses, and speak to other businesses as well, because other businesses out there are making people redundant. You know, don't be a closed book. You've got to communicate with other businesses. And if there are potential individuals that, you know, you could fill a place for that somebody else needs to really sort of not get rid of, but offload, let's say, for argument's sake, you know, get that line of communication open. So yeah, eyes wide open for me. You know, and keep your eye on industries as well that are potentially, you know, not doing particularly well, where you know there is going to be, you know, an increase of heads, let's say, becoming available. You know, our two most recent telemarketeers are bricklayers. Because they've gone from being employed in the last 4 to 6 weeks, have been told, oh no, you're self-employed now, sites are shutting, we're not doing as many houses, we're holding off. Oh no, I need a job. I don't want to become self-employed. And they've completely changed their industry. So, and one of them has been actually really, really successful. One of the most successful telemarketers we've had. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, I think that's another good conversation, all wrapped up. And as we keep saying at the end of every episode, like, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we will be back for more.
Brilliant. Thank you.